Daf Yomi, Tractate Bava, page 41b, at the top of the page. Continuing from our Zutra's objection about the extra word of it shall not be eaten, an ox that was stoned. Okay, that was stoned to death, not an ox that got stoned. Haha. Okay, hecha de badak tzur v'shachad bo. Only in a case where he checked a sharp piece of flint and seeing that it did not have any defects, slaughtered the ox with it. In that case, one could say that by slaughtering it with a stone, he performed the equivalent to stoning. Very creative. Therefore, it is prohibited to eat it. But in a case where he slaughtered it with a knife made of metal, one is not prohibited from eating it. The sages said in response, is that to say that it is written in the Torah that slaughter must be performed specifically with a knife, which would justify a distinction between slaughtering it with a stone and a knife? But didn't we learn in the Mishnah in Chulin 15b, with regard to one who slaughters with a hand sickle, with a piece of flint, or with a reed, if these implements were suitable to be used for slaughter, his slaughter is valid? The Gemara asks, and according to Rabbi Bahu, now that he derives the prohibition of eating and the prohibition of deriving benefit from the verse, its flesh shall not be eaten, why do I require the statement, the owner of the ox shall be clear? The Gemara answers, this is stated to prohibit deriving benefit from its hide after it has been killed. As it could enter your mind to say that it is specifically its flesh from which it is prohibited to derive benefit. As the verse states, its flesh shall not be eaten, but deriving benefit from its hide will be permitted. Therefore, the Torah teaches us that the owner of the ox shall be clear, to indicate it is prohibited to derive benefit from any part of the ox. The Gemara asks, and according to those Tanaim who expound this verse, the owner of the ox shall be clear, for another interpretation, as we wish to state below, from where do they derive this prohibition against deriving benefit from the ox's hide? The Gemara answers, they derive it from the wording, its flesh may not be eaten. V'lo yi'achel et bisaro. The verse could have been formulated, V'lo yi'achel bisaro, which already means, and its flesh shall not be eaten. The additional word of es, or et, teaches that the prohibition applies also to that which is secondary to the flesh. And what is that? That is its hide. The Gemara adds, and this Tana, who derived it from the statement, the owner of the ox shall be clear, does not interpret the word et as a means to derive new halachot. He considers the word et to be an ordinary part of the sentence structure and not a source for exegetical exposition. As it is taught in a Braita, Shimon Hamasuni, and some say it was Nehemiah Hamasuni, would interpret all the occurrences of the word et in the Torah, deriving additional halachot with regard to the particular subject matter. Once he reached the verse, you shall fear the Lord your God, Deuteronomy 6:13, which is written with the added word et, he withdrew from his method of exposition, as whose fear could be an extension of the fear of God. His student said to him, our teacher, what will be with all the occurrences of the word et that you interpreted until now? He said to them the famous words, I'll say them in Hebrew first, Kashem shekibalti schar al hadrisha, kach kibalti schar al aprisha. Yeah, that's pretty famous. I should do that one, yeah. Okay. The gematria of that, yeah. Just as I received reward for the exposition, and this is a kind of a flashback to Kedushin 57a. Anyway, same account happened there. He said to them, just as I received reward for the exposition, so I received reward for my withdrawal from using this method of exposition. Ad shebo Rabbi Akiva v'limed es Hashem Elokecha tireh, Lerabois Talmidei Chachamim. This word et in this verse was not explained until Rabbi Akiva came and expounded, you shall fear the Lord your God. The word et serves to include the Torah scholars, that is, that one is commanded to fear them just as one fears God. In any event, Shimon HaMasuni no longer derived additional achot from the word et. The sages taught with regard to the verse, but the owner of the ox shall be clear, that Rabbi Eliezer says it means that he shall be clear from paying half a ransom. Although the power of the owner of an innocuous ox that causes damage is liable to pay half the cost of the damage, if an ox kills a person, its owner is not liable to pay any ransom. Rabbi Akiva said to him, why is it necessary for the verse to teach this? But isn't compensation for damage caused by an innocuous ox itself anyway paid only from the value of its body? Here too its owner can say to the claimant, bring it to court and it will pay you. That is, you will be paid from its value. Since the ox is stoned, there is nothing from which he can receive payment. Therefore, according to your interpretation, the verse does not introduce any halacha that could not have been inferred by logic, and is therefore superfluous. Rabbi Eliezer said to him, is this how I appear in your eyes? That my derivation from the verse is in reference to this case, that of an ox that is liable to be put to death? Obviously, no verse would be required to teach this halacha in such a case. My derivation is only with regard to a case where the assumption that the ox killed a person is based on the testimony of one witness or is based on the admission of the owner. Such proof is not sufficient for the ox to be put to death by stoning, but one might have thought that it is sufficient to require its owner to pay ransom. The Gemara asked, if it is based on the admission of the owner, he clearly would not be liable to pay ransom, since he would be admitting to an act that results in a fine, in which case a person is exempt from paying the fine. So why would it be necessary for the verse to state this exemption? The Gemara answers, Rabbi Eliezer holds that ransom is for the purpose of atonement, and it is not considered a fine. Accordingly, one might have assumed that even in a case where there is not conclusive testimony, the owner must pay ransom to atone for the killing. Therefore, the verse states that in the case of an innocuous ox, the owner is not liable to pay half a ransom. It is taught in another braita that Rabbi Eliezer said to him, Akiva, is this how I appear in your eyes? That my derivation from the verse is in reference to this case, that of an ox that is liable to be put to death? My derivation is only with regard to a case where the ox intended to kill an animal but killed a person instead, or where it intended to kill a Gentile but killed a Jew, or where it intended to kill a non-viable baby but killed a viable person. An ox is not put to death if it intended to gore in a manner which would not render it liable to be put to death, even if it did gore in such a manner. In such a case, the owner of the ox must pay ransom. Therefore, the verse states that if it is an innocuous ox, the owner is exempt from paying half a ransom. These two braitot cite different responses that Rabbi Eliezer gave Rabbi Akiva. Which of these explanations did he say to him first? Rav Kahana said in the name of Rava, he first said to him the explanation referring to the ox's intention to kill someone for which it would not be liable to be put to death, and subsequently gave him the second explanation with regard to the testimony of a single witness or the owner's admission. Rav Tav Yomi said in the name of Rava, he first said to him, Rav Tav Yomi appears on Rosh Chodesh Teves, Tav Yomi. Nice. Said in the name of Rava, the first said to him the explanation that is a case where the assumption that the ox killed was based on one witness or its owner's admission. The Gemara explains the reasoning behind the two opinions. Rav Kahana said in the name of Rava, at first he said to him the explanation involving the ox's intention, since this opinion is preferable to the other one against which difficulty was raised earlier. This is analogous to a fisherman pulling fish from the sea.